First of all, how long have you guys known each other?
So it's very interesting. Steve and I have known each other, I don't know, Steve, what, 15, 20 years?
That sounds, I got to Jersey in 2002.
2002,
so
since 2002. And I first met Steve, and I think you were sleeping on a mattress somewhere in Hoboken?
I know. I started in Woodbridge, New Jersey.
Oh.
That's right. I was in a
even more
mattress
glamorous.
there. Yeah.
Even more glamorous.
Where the Parkway and the Turnpike meet.
Of course, home of James E. McGreevy.
That's right.
The funny thing, Steve, before we even get into your book, which was fantastic, Emily and I both read it, and it was just an unbelievable read and brought back a lot of memories for those of us who lived through the 90s. But what was amazing to me is the story of how you got started in politics. Because you and I talked about the fact that you got started in politics. I think you were at BU, which is also my alma mater, and you were interviewing for a job. And why don't you finish telling that story?
Fresh out of college and trying to figure out what to do. I think we think of like internet journalism as having been here forever, right, and taking it for granted. But in 2002, it was a novelty. The idea that there was a sense that newspapers would migrate there eventually, but they put their stories up online, and you didn't have social media and all that stuff. So there was. I was looking for jobs in journalism. I was working in the overnight shift at New England Cable News, outside Boston, 24-hour regional news channel. I was writing news copy for the morning news. Didn't really like it that much, and I was looking around. There was a listing on the career website for Boston University, and it was for an online. It's for New Hampshire. They said at the time. It said New Hampshire, cover the 2004 New Hampshire primary. Get in on the ground floor, cover the candidates. You don't need to know the policy well. We're covering the politics we're covering the process, the politics, and must have a car. So I wrote this long letter, not knowing who this person was. It was politicsnh.com, and I was kind of eager for some kind of a chance at something here. Didn't hear back for 2 weeks. Kind of gave it up, and then got this reply one day for this person saying, unfortunately the job's been filled, but we have an opening in New Jersey. Would you be interested? And I knew next to nothing about New Jersey. Grew up in Massachusetts, drove through a few times, and that was about it. And but I was, like, well, this could be kind of interesting, right? And the interview was, he told me that the person who signed this thing signed it under the name Wally Edge, told me the interview. He would interview me on AOL Instant Messenger because he was anonymous. This was an anonymously owned and edited site.
First, what was your AIM screen name?
I had to get one because I was actually, this is in the middle of summer too. I remember I was at my uncle has a beach store in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. So I was there during the day, and my cousin, who was 10 years old at the time, this is no Wi-Fi back then. So you had to go find an internet cafe, or you had to go find a house that had dial-up. So he had a friend's house in Portland, Maine, who had the dial-up. So my 10-year-old cousin, I drove to his friend's house and got on their dial-up, had to download all this whole thing, and just to have his interview with this Charlie's Angels kind of thing. And it was just it was one of those. When I would tell people about it, they would they'd be like, "This is the sketchiest thing I ever heard. How could you ever do this?" But I interviewed for it. The guy had done some research on me just online through Google or whatever. He knew some basics about me. Clearly, and I was talking to enough people I knew who knew enough about New Jersey politics to tell me the site did have credibility with people in New Jersey politics. And then, he offered me the job, sent up a check, a good faith check for $1,000 to prove he was for real. It cleared. I said, well, there must be something to this. So I went down there and I was like, you know what? If it doesn't work, I'll move back in a couple of months and chalk it up to experience. But within a week, I was interviewing Bob Torricelli, who was in battle as U.S. Senator in 2002, and I did about a little more than 3 years in New Jersey. It's the 3 funnest years I had covering politics.
So the story that people may not know is that Wally Edge, you guys have actually known each other longer, which you may not realize, but
I knew you before I knew Julie.
the one thing I have to say, I don't know what the rules at MSNBC are. It always used to irritate me, Fox, that we'd never be able to have a drink on air. So we all ask our guests always what they want to drink and what their favorite drink is. I'm not going to make fun of you.
No, everybody does.
I'm just going to put this out there.
Yeah, I'm used to it.
I'm here in my hot little hand. cans have a 12-pack, cans I might add, of Bud Light, which I actually don't know how to open because it's been a long time.
The bottles are a little fancier.
We're class all the way here. It's all
refrigerated too.
Refrigerated. Don't say I take good care of you. So we just pop open our Bud Light as we continue this conversation.
I didn't think you guys would have to drink it too. Now I feel guilty. I thought you'd have your own favorites.
No. We're here for the long haul.
So now I've inflicted this on you. I feel well.
You have. Cheers.
Yeah,
Here you go. Cheers.
Let's talk about the book while we drink, because talking about Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton wants to make you drink. Tell me about the thesis of the book. The book's
Yeah, and I don't think Reagan and O'Neill are having Bud Light either. But I mean, it is. It's the '90s were. I think a lot of people remember the '90s for the strong economy. You know, there was one war, the Gulf War, at the start of the decade, and it went quicker than anybody thought it ever would. The ground war lasted less than 100 hours. You know, Bush Sr., who was the president at the time, said, you know, by God, we've kicked the Vietnam syndrome once and for all. It was this triumphant moment for America. You know, the tech boom, .com, all this stuff. So we remember the '90s that way. But the politics in the '90s was a series of wars, really political wars throughout the decade. And I think it's Bill Clinton, as you say, it's the first Democratic president in a dozen years. This idea had taken hold in American politics by the start of the '90s that the Republicans had a lock on the presidency. You know, Reagan hadn't just won; he won 49 states in 1984. Bush Sr. got 40 in 1988. I mean, these were landslide elections like we don't have anymore. And there was this sense in the Democratic Party they just couldn't win in this country anymore. And then along comes Bill Clinton, and he wins. So that was like, this was a major achievement. And there was a generational component. This is the first time you have a baby boomer president. So, you know, Bush, Reagan, they'd all been that World War II generation. So there's a changeover there as well. And so you've got a Democratic president, and he comes in with big majorities in the Congress. The other thing that's new is when Clinton becomes president, you got Newt Gingrich. And Newt Gingrich at that point was technically the number 2 Republican in the House, but Gingrich had changed the Republican Party over the decade or so before Bill Clinton got elected. He had changed the Congressional Republican Party. Because if the Republicans supposedly had a lock on the presidency, the Congress was supposedly the permanent Democratic Congress. Republicans couldn't win this. They were 80 seats in the minority. And Gingrich had basically turned the Republicans on Capitol Hill into this much more sort of well-oiled machine in his mold. They partisan combat. You don't compromise with Democrats. You're not going to get out of the minority if you make deals. If you give the Democrats half of what they want, you got to fight them. You got to make really big, clear contrasts with them, really dramatic stands. And so Gingrich has sold the Republicans on this for the decade before. Bill Clinton comes in '93, and now for the first time, this Gingrich approach is sort of unleashed on a Democratic president. And that's the collision. And that's the collision, I think, that sets off. Bill Clinton's first 2 years are really tumultuous. He has Hillary Clinton try to do health care reform. It collapses. He passes a tax hike. Not a single Republican supports it. They call it the largest tax increase in world history. Republican Revolution in '94. Then you had the government shutdown in '95. Clinton's comeback in '96. You know, Lewinsky and impeachment in '98, '99. And yeah, I think it was exhausting for people. And the other thing it did, though, was it forced people to choose sides. It forced people to see the Republican Party as the party of Newt, the Democratic Party as the party of Bill Clinton, and the baggage that came with that, and to decide how they sorted that out in their own minds. And what it left us with is, I think, the enduring symbol of the decade is that election map from 2000. Almost dead even, almost a perfect tie. Red states, blue states, red America, blue America. No one had ever thought of the country. No one had thought of those colors as political colors before. And I think it's kind of the framework we've had ever since.
I have to tell you, though, when I was reading your book, I really felt that a lot of I'm a millennial, so for what we're seeing in the media now, how Trump and a lot of this negativity and just this divide is somehow new, and it's like it wasn't ever like this. But reading your book, what struck me is, yes, it was. It was pretty much just as tribal, I guess. What's your opinion? Because I feel like all of us working in the media today, I feel like, especially I'm looking at this like, oh, this is so new, what we're going through is just awful. It's
right.
Morally awful. But no, I don't know, because this was a lesson for me who just knew basic info, but learning how tribal it was and how already a lot of the foundation had been set for the anti-immigration, a lot of this rhetoric, I had no idea was set up at this time.
I think there have been like a lot of what we see now. There have been strains of in American history. I mean, the cliche almost is to say we fought a civil war, but we fought a civil war. So I mean, these things have gone deep. They've been ugly before, and there have been these moments of just like profound division in this country. I think what was unique about the '90s, and what I try to sort of the story I try to tell in the book, is that all of this division, all of these dividing lines in the country, ended up sort of syncing up with political party. And I think that was the new thing about the 1990s, where by the end of the decade, party had almost become, it was almost a form of identity for people, cultural identity. Whereas party used to be, I guess I'm a Republican, and what does that mean? Are you a liberal Republican from the Northeast? Are you a isolationist from the Midwest? They had all this ideological diversity used to be under that banner. And the Democrats, you used to say I'm a Democrat, and you could mean I'm a union guy from the Northeast. No, I'm a very conservative Southerner. No, I'm an African American who was enfranchised because of the Democratic Party. Well, I mean, like, it used to mean all sorts of different things. And by the end of the 90s, you could just look at the basic cultural and demographic and regional fault lines in this country, and they sorted out with party. The South, the white South, was heavily Republican. The college-educated Northeast, increasingly Democratic. The lines were very clear by the end of the decade.
So who do you think, and what struck me was the tangential characters who are not so tangential, because it turns out that history made them a lot more relevant than at the time. You look at somebody like Pat Buchanan.
Yeah.
Was Pat Buchanan the harbinger for Donald Trump? I mean, you look at where the Republican Party is now, and you look at where the Republican Party was when George Bush was their standard bearer, and then you have Pat Buchanan not winning New Hampshire, but everybody by default thought he won New Hampshire by virtue of doing so well in a state that was you'd think was in George Bush's bailiwick because he is a Yankee.
Yeah.
Republican, as you said. Here comes Pat Buchanan talking about nativism, talking about immigration, talking about all the issues that you see Republicans talking about today that Republicans back then didn't really talk about. In fact, Reagan was the architect of the 1986 amnesty bill.
Right.
And here comes Pat Buchanan essentially jettisoning Reaganism to some extent. Was he the harbinger? Was Ross Perot the harbinger?
I think Buchanan is, just for the policy platform, it's in some cases it's word for word. What Buchanan was running on in the 1990s, it turned into what Trump ran on in 2016. I think there was some Perot in it, in that Perot in the 90s showed there was sort of a way to crash the two parties. You could take money, you could take some sort of celebrity, you could find new avenues through this expanding media environment to bypass the traditional gatekeepers. Ross Perot in 92 basically announced his candidacy on Larry King Live on CNN. And this is pre-social media. This viral movement sprouted up in the spring of 92 that got Ross Perot on the ballot everywhere. I mean, in Texas, the state of Texas, 2 months after he says this on Larry King Live, they submit 250,000 ballot signatures to get this guy on the ballot. Like that's. So I think Trump's sort of sense of politics was informed by that. It was informed by Gingrich and a lot of what Gingrich did. But I think Buchanan, the platform is Buchanan, because Buchanan was running on unfair trade deals. We're going to rip them up. We're going to revive American manufacturing. We're going to have, he called it a fence, Trump called it a wall, but we're going to have a fence along the Mexican border. We're going to have a moratorium for 5 years on all immigration because there's just been too much cultural change in this country. He railed against multiculturalism, political correctness. It was, you just look at it and say, this is what Buchanan did what Trump did a generation later. And what Buchanan was revealing, he ran 3 times in the course of the decade for president. He revealed that there was a bigger market for that on the Republican side than the Republican Party at the time would ever have admitted or ever believed. He kind of revealed it. He forced them to kind of confront it. And the closest he came to the nomination was in 96, the second time he ran. And he actually won a couple primaries. And there was this moment, brief, but there was a moment for a couple weeks there when Republican leaders had to stare at this possibility of, is this party, are our voters actually going to nominate this guy?
Yeah, but to some extent, if you think about Buchanan in the 90s, while he did have a populist economic message, maybe not populist the way Perot did, but an economic message, I think he put a template for the Republican Party that later George Bush's son, to some extent, followed. Mm-hmm. And certainly Donald Trump, who's now the de facto face and has taken over the party in ways that I think no president in my memory has ever taken over a party, maybe Bill Clinton in the early 90s, but if you look at Clintonism now, that's not the case anymore. I'm not sure Clintonism has a place in the party the way Bill Clinton envisioned it 20 years ago. Pat Buchanan today, Pat Buchanan back in 1992, I think, had a much more interesting message where he was, as I said, the harbinger for what was to come. And I'm wondering if Bernie Sanders, in that sense, from an economic message, has that to come as well. Yes, Bernie Sanders is another old white guy from Vermont. He's never going to be another Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, or Cory Booker, or Hillary Clinton for that matter. But he's also somebody who spoke to issues that I think millennials really responded to.
Yeah.
In ways that you wouldn't think a 70-year-old white guy would. Pat Buchanan.
Well, he's got the ideological program. I think Buchanan had just whatever you thought of him in the 90s. He had a very detailed, thought out, specific program. And Sanders, I think, in a way, a lot of other Democrats doesn't, has this very detailed, specific program that it's one he was talking about 20 years ago. He's talking about now, and it raises the question: is this the kind of template, the kind of blueprint that somebody could pick up a decade or two from now, and maybe there'll be a straight through line from here to there, but maybe it's something somebody could pick up 10, 20 years from now in a way that some of these other candidates who are more maybe personality based in their appeal, what's there when you take the actual candidate away.
Well, that's true, because I'm not really sure what imprint Barack Obama or George Walker Bush left on their respective parties. I mean, they just happened to be presidents, but I'm not sure that they left an imprint the way that Ronald Reagan did, for example. Yeah. The way Bill Clinton did.
Well, and Bush, the war, it's the contested legacy. It's the, but right, the original Bush vision of compassionate conservatism and what that entailed is not.
Yeah, there's no Bushism for either Bush, for that matter, neither his father nor him.
Right.
So I kind of have a question for both of you. If I were to put you guys side by side on screen and ask you, how do we move forward from this tribalism? Do you see that happening in the next couple of years, Julie and Steve? I don't.
Are you optimistic?
Yeah. So we have this game called Two Truths and a Lie.
Okay.
And you were supposed to tell us, I hope you came ready, your two truths and one lie. We're supposed to guess what it is. So we can get to know Steve Kornacki a little better.
My two truths and my one lie. Okay.
Take a swig.
He is, in fact, enjoying the Bud Light.
Yeah, I will enjoy it with him.
I have a college diploma. Okay. What was the second one? Wait a minute. I have a college diploma. My license has never been suspended. Okay. And I was rejected from Notre Dame when I applied for college.
I'm going to guess that the one lie is that you have a college diploma.
Do I answer or do I?
No, I'm going to go with the lie is you never got your license suspended.
Do we answer now?
Yeah.
That the lie is that